In a quiet little town surrounded by green hills and winding roads, life moved at its own pace. People knew each other's names, shared stories over cups of tea, and looked out for one another in their small but close-knit community. Among these residents was a hard-working woman who spent her days serving tables at the local diner. She wasn't rich or famous, just an ordinary person trying to make ends meet, but she had a heart that couldn't turn away from those in need. Every morning she woke up before sunrise, got her son ready for school, and headed straight to work. Her shifts were long, often stretching late into the evening, but she never complained. For her, it wasn't just about earning money. It was about giving her boy a better future. Despite the challenges, she always managed to smile through the exhaustion, because deep down she believed things would get better someday. One chilly autumn evening, as she walked home after yet another grueling shift, something caught her eye. Sitting on a park bench under the dim glow of a street lamp were 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. Their clothes were torn, their faces smudged with dirt, and they huddled together as if trying to shield themselves from the cold. What struck her most, though, was the emptiness in their eyes. They weren't just lost, they were hungry. Her heart sank. Without thinking twice, she approached them cautiously, not wanting to scare them off. "Hey there," she said softly, kneeling down so she could look them in the eye. "Are you kids okay?" The oldest boy, probably around 10 years old, nodded hesitantly, but his younger siblings clung to him tightly, too scared to speak. It didn't take long for her to realize they hadn't eaten in days. The thought made her stomach churn. How could anyone let children go through this? She quickly rummaged through her bag, pulling out the sandwich she'd packed for herself earlier that day. "Here," she said, handing it to them. "It's not much, but it'll help." The gratitude in their eyes nearly broke her. That moment stayed with her long after she tucked her own son into bed that night. As she lay awake staring at the ceiling, she couldn't shake the image of those 3 kids shivering in the cold. Something inside her told her she couldn't just walk away, not when she knew what it felt like to be hungry. From that day forward, she started bringing extra food with her whenever she left the house. Sometimes it was leftover fries from the diner, other times a warm bowl of soup she'd prepared at home. Every evening, without fail, she'd stop by the park to check on the children. Over time, they began trusting her enough to open up about their lives. They were orphans, abandoned by relatives who couldn't, or wouldn't, take care of them. With nowhere else to go, they survived however they could, scavenging scraps and sleeping wherever they found shelter. Hearing their story only strengthened her resolve to help. Though she barely had enough for herself and her son, she refused to let them suffer. She started cutting back on groceries, skipping meals when necessary, and even picking up extra shifts at the diner to cover the cost of feeding the kids. Some nights, she'd sit alone in the kitchen wondering how far she could stretch her paycheck before it snapped completely. But every time doubt crept in, she reminded herself why she was doing this. These children deserved a chance, a real chance, at life, and if no one else was going to step up, then she would. Word spread among the staff at the diner about her nightly routine. At first, some admired her generosity, whispering about how kind she was to care for strangers while struggling herself. But others weren't so understanding. "Why does she keep taking food?" one coworker muttered during a break. "Doesn't she know we're already short-staffed and over budget?" Another chimed in, rolling their eyes. "She's basically stealing. If everyone did what she's doing, we'd all be out of a job." Though she tried to ignore the gossip, it stung. She wasn't stealing. It wasn't like that at all. All she wanted was to help. Still, she couldn't deny the truth. She was sneaking leftovers into paper bags, hiding them beneath napkins so no one would notice. Guilt gnawed at her. But what choice did she have? Those kids depended on her now. Turning her back on them wasn't an option. Little did she know someone else had been watching her too. A man who frequented the diner, usually sitting alone in a corner booth with a newspaper and a cup of black coffee, had taken note of her actions. He saw the way she carefully wrapped food and slipped it into her bag. He noticed how tired she looked but still smiled brightly when greeting customers. and he heard the whispers of disapproval from her coworkers, which grew louder with each passing day. This man wasn't just any customer. He was someone with power and resources, though. Few people in town knew much about him. To most, he was simply a mysterious figure who came and went without explanation. But behind his calm exterior lay a sharp mind and a keen interest in human behavior. He admired her selflessness, yes, but he also wondered how far she'd go, and whether anyone else truly understood the sacrifices she was making. For weeks he observed silently, weighing his options. Should he intervene? Or should he let events unfold naturally? Either way, he knew one thing for certain. Her kindness was about to change everything for better or worse. The tension at the diner had been building for days, bubbling beneath the surface like a pot about to boil over. The whispers among the staff grew louder, and the sidelong glances became harder to ignore. She tried to brush it off, focusing instead on her work, pouring coffee, taking orders, and making sure every customer left satisfied. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something big. One morning, as she clocked in for her shift, her manager called her into his office. Her stomach tightened. It wasn't like him to pull employees aside unless there was trouble. When she stepped inside, he gestured for her to sit, but she stayed standing, clutching her apron nervously. "What's going on?" she asked, trying to sound calm despite the knot forming in her chest. Her manager sighed, leaning back in his chair. He looked uncomfortable, almost guilty, but there was no mistaking the firmness in his voice when he finally spoke. "We've noticed some discrepancies lately," he began, choosing his words carefully. "Food has gone missing from the kitchen, leftovers, extra portions. You know what I'm talking about." She froze, her mind racing. Had someone seen her slipping those meals into her bag? Was this really happening? Part of her wanted to explain, to tell him why she'd done it and how desperately those kids needed help. But another part of her knew it wouldn't matter. Excuses wouldn't change anything. In his eyes, she wasn't just bending the rules. She was breaking them. "I didn't think it was a big deal," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "I was just trying to help people who don't have anyone else." Her manager shook his head, sympathy flickering across his face for a brief moment before vanishing. "I get that you're doing it out of kindness," he replied. "But this is a business. We can't afford to lose inventory, not even for good intentions. You understand where I'm coming from, right?" She nodded slowly, though her heart sank. Of course she understood. It wasn't personal. It was policy. Still, hearing those words felt like a punch to the gut. Without waiting for her response, he handed her an envelope containing her final paycheck. "I'm sorry," he added, his tone softer now, "but we have to let you go." Walking out of that office felt surreal, like stepping into a nightmare. Her legs felt heavy, each step more difficult than the last. Colleagues avoided eye contact as she grabbed her things from the break room, their silence speaking volumes. Some of them might have agreed with the decision, while others probably pitied her. Either way, none of them said a word. By the time she reached the parking lot, tears were streaming down her face. Sitting behind the wheel of her car, she allowed herself a moment to cry, to release the fear, frustration, and shame that had been building up inside her. Losing her job wasn't just inconvenient, it was catastrophic. How would she pay rent, feed her son, take care of the 3 orphans who relied on her? That night, she sat at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of bills in front of her. Overdue, notices stared back at her, mocking her inability to keep up. Her landlord had already sent a warning letter earlier in the week, giving her 7 days to settle the account or vacate the apartment. With no income coming in, meeting that deadline seemed impossible. For the first time in years, she felt completely helpless. Her son walked into the room, sensing her distress. At 12 years old, he was old enough to understand when something was wrong but still too young to fully grasp the weight of adult problems. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked, placing a hand on her shoulder. She forced a smile, wiping away her tears. "Yeah, buddy, I'm fine," she lied, pulling him close. "Just tired, that's all." He didn't press further, knowing better, than to push when she clammed up. Instead, he hugged her tightly, offering comfort in the only way he knew how. That simple gesture reminded her why she kept fighting, even when everything seemed hopeless. She had to hold on, for him, for the kids in the park, and for herself. As if on cue, a knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Opening it, she found the 3 children standing there, shivering in the cold. They looked worse than usual, their clothes damp from the rain and their faces pale with hunger. Seeing them like that broke her heart all over again. Without hesitation, she ushered them inside, wrapping blankets around their shoulders and fixing them a quick meal from the meager supplies left in her pantry. While they ate, she listened to their stories, learning more about their struggles, since losing their parents. Each word they spoke filled her with anger, not at them, but at the world that had failed them so cruelly. Why should innocent children suffer because of circumstances beyond their control? Why should anyone have to choose between eating and staying warm? Later that evening, after tucking them into makeshift beds on the living room floor, she stood by the window, gazing out at the darkened streets. Somewhere in the distance, a car drove past, its headlights cutting through the fog. As she watched, a shadowy figure emerged from the vehicle, walking toward her building. Squinting, she recognized him immediately, the man from the diner, the one who always sat alone in the corner booth. Her breath hitched. What was he doing here? Had he followed her? Before she could react, another knock echoed through the apartment. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door, bracing herself for whatever came next. Standing there was the mysterious diner patron, dressed in a tailored coat and holding an umbrella dripping with rainwater. His expression was unreadable, neither friendly nor hostile. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Finally, he broke the silence. "May I come in?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. She hesitated, unsure whether to trust him. After everything that had happened today, the last thing she needed was another complication. Still, curiosity got the better of her. Stepping aside, she gestured for him to enter, closing the door behind him. He glanced around the modest apartment, taking note of the sleeping children and the worn furniture. Then, turning back to her, he spoke. "I've been watching you for a while now," he admitted. "Your actions haven't gone unnoticed." Her defenses rose instantly. "If you're here to lecture me about losing my job, save it," she snapped, folding her arms across her chest. "I already heard enough of that today." To her surprise, he chuckled softly. "No lectures," he assured her. "In fact, quite the opposite. I'm here because I want to help." Help? The word caught her off guard. No one offered help without expecting something in return. Suspicion clouded her mind. "Why?" she demanded, narrowing her eyes. "Why would you care about what happens to us?" He paused, considering his answer. "Because sometimes people need a reminder that kindness still exists in this world," he said simply. "And because I believe in investing in those who make sacrifices for others." For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Could she trust him? Or was this just another trap disguised as goodwill? Only time would tell. But for now, she decided to listen. Maybe, just maybe, this stranger held the key to turning her life around. The stranger's words hung in the air, heavy with possibility but laced with uncertainty. She studied him carefully, searching for any hint of dishonesty or hidden motives. His demeanor was calm, almost too composed, as if he were used to making life-altering offers. Yet there was something genuine in his tone, something that made her pause and consider what he was saying. "I don't understand," she finally said, breaking the silence. "Why would you want to help me? You don't even know me." He nodded slowly, acknowledging her skepticism. "You're right. I don't know you personally. But I've seen how hard you work, how much you sacrifice without expecting anything in return. That kind of selflessness is rare these days. And when someone like you comes along, it's worth paying attention." Her guard didn't drop completely, but his explanation softened her resistance just enough to keep listening. Still, she couldn't shake the nagging voice in her head, warning her not to trust easily. Life had taught her that people rarely offered help without strings attached. Even so, desperation pushed her to ask the question burning on her lips. "What exactly do you mean by help?" He smiled faintly, as though he'd been waiting for her to ask. "Let's start with the basics," he said. "You need a way to provide for yourself and those kids. Losing your job at the diner put you in a tough spot, but it doesn't have to be the end of the road. What if I told you I could give you the means to create something bigger, something that helps not just them but others in similar situations?" Her brow furrowed. "Something bigger? Like what?" "A community kitchen," he replied matter-of-factly. "A place where anyone who needs a meal can come and eat for free. A space run by people like you who care about making a difference. It wouldn't just feed families, it would bring the community together." For a moment she couldn't speak. The idea sounded almost too good to be true. A community kitchen, run by her? It was bold, ambitious, and terrifying. Who was she, to take on such a responsibility? Sure, she loved cooking and helping others, but managing an entire operation? That felt like stepping into uncharted territory. I don't know," she stammered, shaking her head. "It sounds amazing, but I'm not sure I'm the right person for this. I've never done anything like that before." "That's okay," he reassured her. "You won't be doing it alone. I'll handle the funding, the setup, everything behind the scenes. All you need to focus on is running the kitchen and leading the team. Think of it as an opportunity to turn your kindness into something lasting." She bit her lip, torn between hope and fear. On one hand, the offer was tempting. With a kitchen like that, she could ensure no child ever went hungry again. On the other hand, accepting help from someone she barely knew felt risky. What if things went wrong? What if she failed? As if sensing her hesitation, he added gently, "I'm not asking you to decide tonight. Take some time to think about it. But remember, sometimes taking a leap of faith is the only way to change your circumstances." With that, he handed her a business card, simple, elegant, with a phone number printed neatly on it. "Call me when you're ready," he said, then turned and walked out the door, leaving her standing there, heart pounding and mind racing. Over the next few days, she wrestled with the decision. Every morning, she woke up feeling the weight of her situation pressing down on her. The overdue rent notice sat prominently on the counter, a constant reminder of how precarious her life had become. Her son tried to stay positive, cracking jokes, and offering hugs whenever he sensed her stress, but even his optimism couldn't fully lift the cloud hanging over their home. Meanwhile, the 3 children continued to rely on her for food and shelter. They'd grown comfortable in her apartment, treating it like their own little sanctuary. Watching them laugh and play together brought her moments of joy, but it also deepened her sense of responsibility. How could she let them down now, after promising to protect them? One afternoon, while walking through town, she stumbled upon an abandoned building. Its windows were boarded up, and weeds sprouted from cracks in the pavement, but she couldn't help imagining what it could become. What if this was the perfect location for the community kitchen? The thought lingered in her mind, refusing to fade away. That evening, she gathered the children around the table and shared the stranger's proposal with them. Their eyes lit up at the idea of having a real place where they could belong, a safe haven where no one would go hungry. "Do you really think it could happen?" the oldest boy asked, his voice filled with cautious excitement. "I don't know yet," she admitted, "but maybe it's worth trying." Her son chimed in, his enthusiasm infectious. "Mom, you should do it. You're already helping everyone. You might as well make it official." His words struck a chord. Maybe he was right. Maybe this was her chance to build something meaningful, not just for herself but for everyone who needed it. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to feel a flicker of hope. The next day, she picked up the business card from the counter and dialed the number. When the stranger answered, his voice was warm and welcoming, as if he'd been expecting her call. "I've thought about it," she said, her voice steady despite the nerves bubbling inside her. "I'm willing to try, but only if we do it the right way. No shortcuts, no secrets." There was a pause on the other end of the line, followed by a chuckle. "Fair enough," he replied. "We'll do it your way. Let's get started." Within days' plans began falling into place. The stranger arranged for the abandoned building to be renovated, transforming its crumbling walls into a bright, inviting space. Volunteers poured in from all corners of the town, eager to contribute their skills and resources. Painters refreshed the interior with cheerful colors. Carpenters built sturdy tables and chairs, and local farms donated fresh produce to stock the shelves. Through it all, she remained at the center of the whirlwind, coordinating efforts and ensuring every detail aligned with her vision. At first, she doubted her ability to lead, but the more she worked alongside the volunteers, the more confident she became. These weren't just strangers lending a hand. They were neighbors coming together to support one another. As the grand opening approached, excitement rippled through the community. Flyers were posted on bulletin boards and word spread quickly about the new kitchen. People stopped her on the street to express their gratitude, sharing stories of friends or family members who would benefit from the initiative. Each conversation fueled her determination to make the project a success. On the day of the opening, the atmosphere buzzed with energy. The once abandoned building now gleamed with warmth and purpose, its doors wide open to welcome anyone in need. Inside, long tables stretched across the room, laden with steaming dishes prepared by her and a team of volunteers. Children giggled as they helped set out plates and utensils while adults mingled, marveling at the transformation. When she stepped up to address the crowd, her voice trembled slightly, but her message was clear. "This isn't just my dream, it's ours," she said, looking around at the sea of faces. "Together, we've created a place where kindness reigns and no one has to face hunger alone. Thank you for believing in this vision and making it a reality." Applause erupted, filling the room with a sense of unity and pride. As she looked out at the smiling faces, she realized that this was more than just a kitchen. It was proof that even in the darkest times, hope could shine through. And for the first time in months, she felt truly hopeful about the future. The opening day of the community kitchen was nothing short of magical. People streamed in from all directions, their faces lighting up as they stepped into the warm, welcoming space. The aroma of freshly cooked meals filled the air, mingling with the sound of laughter and chatter. For many, it wasn't just about food. It was about connection, about feeling seen and valued in a world that often overlooked them. She stood near the entrance, greeting each visitor with a smile that felt both genuine and exhausted. Her hands were still stained with flour from kneading dough earlier that morning, and her feet ached from hours of running around. But none of that mattered. Watching families sit together at the tables, sharing stories over plates of hot stew and crusty bread, made every ounce of effort worth it. This was what she had dreamed of, a place where no one had to go hungry, where kindness reigned supreme. But even amidst the joy, doubts lingered in the back of her mind. Could she really keep this going? Sure, the stranger had funded the initial setup and provided plenty of supplies, but what happened when those resources ran out? What if people stopped volunteering or donations dried up? These questions gnawed at her, threatening to overshadow the triumph of the day. Her son noticed her quiet moments of worry and pulled her aside during a lull in the crowd. "Mom, you're doing amazing," he said earnestly, his young eyes shining with pride. "Don't let your brain trick you into thinking otherwise." She hugged him tightly, grateful for his unwavering support. "Thanks, kiddo," she murmured. "I just want to make sure we can keep this going for everyone who needs it." "You will," he insisted. "You always figure things out." His words stayed with her long after he returned to helping clear tables. Maybe he was right. Maybe she could figure this out. After all, she'd been solving problems on her own for years. Why should this be any different? As the weeks passed, the kitchen became a cornerstone of the community. Word spread far beyond the town limits, drawing visitors from neighboring areas who desperately needed assistance. Families struggling to put food on the table found solace here, knowing they wouldn't be judged or turned away. Even local businesses began pitching in, donating leftover ingredients or sponsoring special events like holiday meals. The 3 children who had once huddled under a park bench now played an integral role in the operation. They helped set tables, wash dishes, and organize supplies, their energy infectious and uplifting. More importantly, they finally had a sense of stability. No longer sleeping rough or scavenging for scraps, they thrived in the safe environment she'd created for them. Their laughter echoed through the halls, a constant reminder of why she kept pushing forward despite the odds. Yet running the kitchen wasn't without its challenges. Supplies occasionally ran low, forcing her to stretch meals creatively. Volunteers came and went, leaving gaps in the schedule that she had to fill herself. And then there were the critics, those who questioned whether such a project could last, whispering about how charity cases might take advantage of free food. Hearing these comments stung, but she refused to let negativity derail her mission. 1. Particularly tough afternoon, she found herself overwhelmed. A shipment of vegetables had spoiled due to improper storage, and 2 key volunteers called in sick, leaving her scrambling to cover their shifts. By the time the lunch rush ended, she collapsed onto a chair in the corner, her head in her hands. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, frustration bubbling over. Just then, the mysterious benefactor appeared carrying a tray of tea and sandwiches. He must have slipped in unnoticed during the chaos. Setting the tray down beside her, he offered her a small, encouraging smile. "Rough day?" he asked gently. She nodded, wiping her face quickly. "It's not just today," she admitted. "Some days I wonder if I'm cut out for this. There's so much pressure to keep everything running smoothly, to make sure no one goes hungry. What if I mess up?" He sat down across from her, his expression thoughtful. "Do you remember why you started this?" he asked after a moment. "Of course," she replied without hesitation. "To help people who don't have anyone else looking out for them." "And have you done that?" he pressed. "Have you made a difference?" She thought about the countless meals served, the smiles of gratitude, the way the kids lit up whenever they walked through the door. "Yeah," she said softly. "I guess I have." "Then focus on that," he encouraged. "Not every day will be perfect and not every problem will have an easy solution. But as long as you're making a difference, even in small ways, you're succeeding." His words struck a chord, lifting some of the weight off her shoulders. She realized she didn't have to carry the burden alone. The community itself was stepping up to share the load. Whether it was a neighbor dropping off canned goods or a teenager offering to sweep floors after school, people were finding ways to contribute. It wasn't just her kitchen anymore. It belonged to everyone. With renewed determination, she threw herself into improving the operation. She reached out to local schools and organizations, asking for partnerships to expand the kitchen's reach. One school agreed to send students for internships, teaching them valuable skills while providing extra hands in the kitchen. Another group organized fundraisers to ensure financial sustainability. Slowly but surely, the pieces fell into place. Even her relationship with the benefactor evolved. Initially wary of his intentions, she grew to trust him as he continued showing up, not just with resources but with advice, encouragement, and occasional acts of quiet kindness. He attended community meetings, listened to feedback, and worked alongside volunteers, proving that his interest extended beyond writing checks. Over time, their partnership blossomed into mutual respect, and whispers of something deeper began to surface among the townsfolk. Despite the gossip, neither of them paid much attention. Their focus remained firmly on the kitchen and the people it served. Together they tackled obstacles, celebrated victories, and dreamed of ways to expand their impact. For her, it felt like the first time in years she wasn't facing life's challenges alone. Months later, the kitchen had become more than just a place to eat. It was a hub of hope and resilience. People gathered not only for meals but also for workshops, art classes, and music nights. Kids learned to cook simple dishes, adults shared job leads, and elders swapped stories of the past. The once abandoned building now pulsed with life, a testament to what could happen when compassion met action. For the 3 children who had sparked this journey, the transformation was profound. They weren't just surviving, they were thriving. School attendance improved, their confidence soared, and they formed friendships with other kids who frequented the kitchen. One evening as she tucked them into bed, the oldest boy looked up at her and said, "Thank you for giving us a home." Her heart swelled with emotion. "This is your home now," she replied, kissing his forehead. "Always." In that moment, she knew she'd made the right choice. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every ounce of doubt had led her here, to a place where love and kindness reigned supreme. And though the road ahead would undoubtedly bring new challenges, she faced them with courage, knowing she wasn't walking it alone. As the months rolled by, the community kitchen continued to grow in ways no one could have predicted. What had started as a modest effort to feed a few hungry mouths blossomed into something much larger, a beacon of hope and unity for an entire town. People weren't just coming for meals anymore. They were coming for connection, for purpose, and for a sense of belonging. The once empty building now buzzed with life every day, its walls echoing laughter, music, and stories shared over plates of food. She poured her heart into making sure the kitchen stayed true to its mission. Every morning she arrived before sunrise, checking inventory, planning menus, and ensuring everything was ready for the day ahead. Volunteers trickled in shortly after. Students eager to learn, retirees looking to give back, and even former skeptics who'd warmed up to the idea of helping others. Together, they formed a team that felt less like coworkers and more like family. One of the most remarkable changes was how the 3 children who had once been orphans found their footing in this new world. They weren't just beneficiaries of the kitchen's generosity, they were active contributors. The oldest boy took charge of organizing supplies, his sharp eye catching things others might miss. His younger brother helped clean tables and sweep floors, always humming a tune under his breath. And the little girl? She became the unofficial greeter, welcoming visitors with hugs and wide smiles that melted hearts instantly. Watching them thrive filled her with pride, knowing she'd played a part in giving them a second chance at life. But it wasn't just about the kids. The impact rippled outward, touching lives far beyond what she'd imagined. Families struggling to make ends. Meat found relief in the free meals, allowing them to stretch their budgets further. Single parents discovered a support system among other caregivers who understood their struggles. Even elderly neighbors, often lonely and isolated, found comfort in the company of regular visitors who stopped by to chat during mealtimes. The kitchen had become more than a place. It was a lifeline. Despite all the progress, challenges still arose. There were days when donations dwindled, forcing her to get creative with recipes. Sometimes volunteers canceled last minute, leaving her scrambling to cover shifts. And then there were the critics, the naysayers who doubted whether such a project could sustain itself long term. "It's nice while it lasts," one person remarked bitterly outside the grocery store, "but charity doesn't fix real problems." Hearing those words stung, but instead of letting negativity bring her down, she used it as fuel to prove them wrong. She reached out to local businesses, schools, and organizations, asking for partnerships to ensure the kitchen's longevity. A nearby bakery began donating unsold bread daily. A farmer offered fresh produce from his fields whenever he had surplus crops. Even the high school started sending students for internships, teaching them valuable skills while providing extra hands in the kitchen. Slowly but surely, the pieces fell into place, creating a network of support that made the operation stronger. The mysterious benefactor remained a steady presence throughout it all. He attended meetings, listened intently to feedback, and worked alongside everyone else, rolling up his sleeves to chop vegetables or stack chairs at the end of the day. His humility surprised many. He didn't act like someone with wealth or power. Instead, he blended in seamlessly, treating everyone with kindness and respect. Some people whispered that he must have ulterior motives, but she knew better. Over time, their partnership deepened, evolving into something neither of them had anticipated. Their bond grew naturally, rooted in mutual admiration and shared goals. Conversations stretched late into the evening as they discussed ideas for expanding the kitchen's reach. Could they add educational programs, host job fairs, offer counseling services for those in need? Each brainstorming session sparked excitement, reminding her why she loved this work so much. For the first time in years, She felt truly seen, not as a struggling single mother or a former waitress scraping by, but as someone capable of leading change. Still, not everyone was convinced. Her son noticed the occasional sideways glance or muttered comment from townsfolk who questioned the benefactor's intentions. One afternoon, as they walked home together, he turned to her and asked, "Do you trust him?" She paused, considering the question carefully. Trust wasn't something she gave easily, especially after everything she'd been through. But when she thought about the countless hours he'd spent working alongside her, the sacrifices he'd made to keep the kitchen running smoothly, and the genuine care he showed for everyone involved, she couldn't deny the truth. "Yes," she said finally. "I do." Her son nodded, satisfied with her answer. "Good. Because I think he cares about you too." Her cheeks flushed at the implication, but she didn't argue. Deep down, she knew her son was right. Their relationship had shifted subtly over time, moving beyond professional collaboration into something warmer, softer, yet neither of them rushed it. They were content to let things unfold naturally, focusing on the work that mattered most. One crisp autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, she stood outside, the kitchen watching the comings and goings of the crowd. Children chased each other across the lawn, their laughter ringing out like bells. Parents chatted near the entrance, swapping stories about school and work. Inside, volunteers moved with practiced efficiency, serving steaming bowls of soup and trays of freshly baked bread. A tap on her shoulder startled her, and she turned to find the benefactor standing there, holding 2 cups of hot cocoa. "Thought you could use a break," he said with a small smile, handing her one of the cups. "Thanks," she replied, taking a sip. The warmth spread through her chest, soothing some of the weariness she'd been carrying all day. "You know, sometimes I can't believe this is real," she admitted after a moment. "All of this, it feels like a dream." "It's real," he assured her, his voice soft but firm. "And it's because of you. You're the reason this place exists." She shook her head, brushing off the compliment. "Not just me. Everyone here plays a part. Without the volunteers, the donors, the families, we wouldn't be able to do any of this." "True," he agreed, "but don't sell yourself short. You're the glue holding it all together. Don't forget that." His words lingered in her mind long after they finished their drinks and returned inside. She realized he was right. She had been selling herself short for years, dismissing her efforts as insignificant compared to the bigger picture. But maybe, just maybe, her contributions mattered more than she'd ever allowed herself to believe. As the night drew to a close and the last visitor left, she locked the doors behind them, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. This kitchen wasn't just a project or a responsibility. It was proof that kindness could spark a chain reaction, inspiring others to pay it forward. And though the road ahead would undoubtedly bring new challenges, she faced them with courage, knowing she wasn't walking it alone. For the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful, not just for herself, but for the future of the community she'd helped build. Whatever came next, she was ready. Months turned into a year, and the community kitchen became more than just a place. It became a symbol of resilience and hope. People from neighboring towns began visiting, inspired by stories they'd heard about how this little project had transformed lives. Journalists came to write articles, photographers snapped pictures of smiling volunteers and happy children, and soon enough, the kitchen's reputation spread far beyond what anyone could have imagined. It wasn't just a local effort anymore. It was a movement. For her, every day brought new challenges, but also new triumphs. The workload was relentless, early mornings, late nights, endless problem-solving, but she thrived on it. Each obstacle felt like another opportunity to grow, to prove that kindness and hard work could overcome anything, and she wasn't alone in this journey. The team around her grew stronger with each passing month, their bond unshakable. Whether it was a volunteer pitching in extra hours or a donor dropping off supplies at the last minute, everyone played a part in keeping the dream alive. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson, she stood outside the kitchen watching the scene unfold before her. Families sat together under string lights strung across the courtyard, sharing meals and laughter. Kids chased each other around, their giggles filling the air like music. Inside, volunteers bustled about, serving plates of steaming food while others wiped down tables and stacked chairs. It was chaotic, yes, but it was beautiful chaos, the kind that made you believe in humanity again. The 3 children who had started it all were now fixtures in the kitchen, not just as helpers, but as leaders. The oldest boy had taken charge of organizing events, his confidence soaring as he coordinated bake sales and holiday dinners. His younger brother helped set up games for the kids during busy weekends, always finding ways to keep them entertained. And the little girl? She remained the heart of the operation, greeting visitors with hugs and bright smiles that lit up the room. Watching them thrive filled her with pride, not because they owed her anything, but because they'd found their own strength and purpose. That night, after the crowd thinned out and the kitchen settled into quiet calm, the benefactor joined, her outside. He carried 2 mugs of tea, steam rising gently in the cool air. Handing one to her, he gestured toward the empty courtyard. "Look at what you've built," he said softly, his tone filled with admiration. She shook her head, laughing, lightly. "Not me, us. This isn't something I did alone." He smiled, nodding. "Fair enough. But none of this would exist without your vision, your courage." Her cheeks flushed at the compliment, but she didn't argue. Instead, she sipped her tea, letting the warmth seep into her tired bones. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars begin to twinkle in the darkening sky. There was so much left unsaid between them, yet somehow words weren't necessary. Their shared experiences spoke louder than any declaration ever could. As time went on, the kitchen continued to evolve. With the help of donations and partnerships, they added new programs aimed at empowering the community. Cooking classes taught adults basic skills, giving them tools to feed their families even when resources were scarce. Art workshops provided kids with creative outlets, helping them express emotions they might otherwise struggle to articulate. Job fairs connected unemployed residents with local employers, offering pathways to stability and independence. But perhaps the most impactful addition was the counseling service. Many visitors came to the kitchen carrying burdens heavier than hunger, loss, trauma, loneliness. Recognizing this need, she worked with mental health professionals to establish a safe space where people could talk openly about their struggles. It wasn't easy. There were days when listening to someone's pain left her feeling drained, but seeing the relief in their eyes afterward reminded her why it mattered. Through it all, the mysterious benefactor stayed by her side. His role shifted subtly over time, moving from behind-the-scenes supporter to active participant. He attended meetings, brainstormed ideas, and rolled up his sleeves alongside everyone else. Yet despite his growing involvement, he never sought recognition. If anything, he seemed determined to stay in the background, letting the focus remain on the community itself. Their relationship deepened naturally, rooted in mutual respect and shared values. Conversations stretched late into the night as they discussed plans for the future. Could they open a second location in a nearby town? Expand services to include housing assistance? Start a scholarship fund for students eager to pursue education? Each idea sparked excitement, reminding her why she loved this work so much. Still, there were moments of doubt. Some nights, lying awake in bed, she wondered if she was pushing herself too hard. Was it possible to balance her responsibilities? As a mother, a leader, and a partner without burning out completely? These thoughts gnawed at her, but they also pushed her to be better, to find healthier ways to manage stress and lean on those around her for support. Her son noticed the toll it took on her, and often reminded her to take breaks. "You're doing amazing, Mom," he'd say, hugging her tightly. "But you don't have to do everything yourself. Let us help." And help they did. Her son pitched in wherever he could, whether it was tutoring younger kids or running errands for the kitchen. The 3 children she'd taken under her wing became like siblings to him, forming a bond that felt unbreakable. Together they created a makeshift family, a patchwork of love and loyalty stitched together by shared experiences. One crisp spring morning, the town gathered for a special event, the anniversary celebration of the community kitchen. Hundreds of people showed up, spilling out onto the streets surrounding the building. Tables groaned under the weight of donated food, and live music filled the air as bands performed on a makeshift stage. Children ran wild through an obstacle course set up in the parking lot, while adults mingled, swapping stories and reminiscing about how far they'd come. During the ceremony, several speakers took the mic to share their gratitude. A single mother talked about how the kitchen had saved her family during tough times. An elderly man recounted how the companionship he'd found here had eased his loneliness. Even some of the volunteers stepped forward, thanking her for giving them a sense of purpose. When it was her turn to speak, she hesitated, overwhelmed by emotion. Looking out at the sea of faces, she saw not just strangers, but friends, allies, and extended family. Clearing her throat, she began slowly. "This kitchen isn't mine," she said, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to spill. "It belongs to all of you, to everyone who has walked through these doors, contributed their time, or simply believed in what we're trying to do. We've built something incredible together, and I'm so proud of what we've achieved." The applause that followed was deafening, echoing through the streets and lifting her spirits higher than she thought possible. As she stepped away from the mic, the benefactor approached, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "You deserve every bit of this," he whispered. "Don't forget that." Later that evening, as fireworks lit up the night sky, she stood beside him, holding his hand. For the first time in years, she felt truly at peace. The road ahead wouldn't always be smooth. Life rarely was, but she faced it with hope, knowing she had a community and a partner who believed in her. In the end, the kitchen wasn't just about feeding bodies, it was about nourishing souls. It proved that kindness, no matter how small, could ripple outward, touching lives in ways no one expected. And though she never sought recognition, her name became synonymous with courage, resilience, and love, a legacy built not on wealth or fame, but on the simple act of caring for others. The end.